I didn't want to believe it at first.
The thought that Jenna, my wife, could cheat on me, it seemed impossible. We'd been together for 7 years, married for 5, and in my mind, everything was perfect. We'd built a life together, shared so many memories. But then, the cracks started to show. Small ones at first, too subtle to catch unless you were paying close attention. And when I finally did notice them, it was already too late. Jenna and I met when we were both in our early 20s. I was in the early days of my tech career. She was getting her master's in something that always sounded more impressive than it really was. I wasn't looking for love when we met, but she was different. She had this quiet strength, this warmth that made everything else fade into the background. I was drawn to her, and before long, I couldn't imagine life without her. By our 5th wedding anniversary, I thought we had it all figured out. Our life together felt solid, easy even. But slowly, things started to change. Jenna started staying late at work. At first it was a night here, a late meeting there. I didn't think much of it. But then it became routine. Nights I'd come home to an empty house, with only a note saying she was out with friends I never met. I didn't question it at first. I trusted her. But then I started noticing how protective she was of her phone. She'd hide the screen when I walked into the room. She'd text quickly, always turning the phone away from me. It was subtle, but it was a shift. And then, the password change. "I just wanted more privacy," she said, when I asked why she'd changed it. It didn't make sense. We had never been private like that before, but I brushed it off. It didn't feel like a big deal. But then there was the necklace. It was the day after my birthday, and she came home with a simple, expensive necklace. "For you," she said, a smile in her eyes, though it didn't quite reach her face. But when I asked where she'd gotten it, she hesitated. "A store," she said, her words vague. She didn't know the name. She couldn't remember if it was for my birthday or just a random gift. It didn't add up. That's when I started to watch her more closely. I kept catching glimpses of her phone, texts, calls, a name I didn't recognize. She'd leave the house at odd times, sometimes late at night. I'd ask where she was going and she'd give me some excuse. Work, dinner with friends. She always had an answer. Then, one afternoon, I saw him. I'd been driving home early from work and saw Jenna's car parked in the driveway. But she wasn't there. I sat in my car, watching, waiting. After a few minutes, I saw him, tall, muscular, dark hair. He walked toward her house, not in a rush, but not casual either. Jenna came out to meet him, smiling like I hadn't seen her smile in a long time. They exchanged a few words, too far for me to hear, and then he
Touched her arm.
It wasn't a casual touch. It was too intimate for just a friend. I wanted to dismiss it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just imagining things. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the image of them. Jenna and this man, whatever their relationship was, it wasn't just a professional one. That much was clear. For the next few days, I watched her more closely. She kept talking about this friend. But I never met him. I didn't even know his name. I felt like I was missing something crucial, but I couldn't figure out what. I asked around, tried to find out who he was, but every trail led nowhere. He was a ghost. Every time I thought I was getting close to an answer, I hit a dead end. I didn't want to believe it, but the suspicion gnawed at me. Jenna had changed. She was distant, secretive. I wanted to confront her, but something held me back. I didn't know if I was ready to hear the truth. I kept telling myself it wasn't what I thought it was, but deep down, I knew. Something was happening, and it wasn't just in my head. Abbas, I couldn't stop thinking about him, the way he'd looked at her, how their conversation had felt more than friendly. It wasn't just the small things, like the texts or her need for privacy. It was the bigger shifts, the change in her behavior. Jenna had started pulling away, spending more time at the gym, taking walks, and going out with friends I'd never met. It felt like I was losing her, but I wasn't ready to face it. Still, the nagging feeling wouldn't let go. I told myself I was overthinking, that I trusted her, but doubt clawed at me. She was hiding something, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. One night, she left for dinner with that friend again. A vague mention of some gathering, no details. I couldn't just sit at home, wondering. I decided to follow her. I trailed her to a quiet parking lot near a small restaurant on the outskirts of town. I parked a little away and waited. After some time, she walked in. A moment later, he appeared, the same man I'd seen before, the one who'd kissed her outside our house. They hugged. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen in months, genuine, easy. I stayed in my car, the engine off, watching them. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that I was wrong. But I couldn't. They went inside together, and I stayed put. The uncertainty gnawed at me. I tried to push it down, but it was impossible. Every inch of me was screaming that something was wrong. I watched the door until they came out, hours later. They were laughing, close, the space between them tighter than I expected. They walked toward the parking lot, and I saw it before I could look away. He kissed her, full on the lips, slow, lingering. My heart stopped. She kissed him back. I couldn't breathe. I felt paralyzed, caught between fury and disbelief. She didn't pull away. She didn't hesitate. She kissed him back like it was nothing, like I wasn't there. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I seen it? I wanted to drive off. I wanted to forget what I had just seen, to deny it all. But I couldn't. I had to watch. I had to see this through. They broke apart, and Jenna walked to her car, her head down. The man stood there watching her leave, then turned and disappeared into the night. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I already knew. I didn't need words, not anymore. The kiss told me everything. I stayed in my car, hands shaking, staring at nothing. The picture of them together played over and over in my mind. I wasn't sure what to do next. Should I confront her? Should I just leave? My head was spinning. One thing was clear now. I was no longer imagining it. Jenna was cheating on me. But with who? And how long had this been going on? I still had no answers, only the heavy weight of uncertainty hanging over me. The drive back home was surreal. My mind replayed the scene at the restaurant, their kiss, her response. I wasn't ready for what I had to do, but it was clear there was no avoiding it any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I walked in, my thoughts still racing. Jenna was on the couch, her hair damp, eyes red like she'd been crying. She didn't look at me when I came in. She didn't even acknowledge my presence, and that wasn't like her. The silence between us felt thick, heavy with something unsaid. "Jenna," I said, breaking the silence. My voice sounded tighter than I expected, sharper. She looked up, offering a half-hearted smile. "Hey, babe, you're home early. How was your day?" It felt wrong, her asking me about my day when I was the one standing here, holding the truth. "Where were you tonight?" I asked, my voice firmer this time. She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "What do you mean?" I didn't have the patience to dance around it anymore. Dinner with friends, or was it just you and him? The confusion on her face flickered, quickly replaced with something else. A brief moment of panic, and then she went still, her eyes avoiding mine. She knew exactly what I meant. "Who is he, Jenna?" I pressed, stepping forward. "Why are you lying to me?" Her lips parted, but she didn't speak at first. Then she exhaled a shaky breath. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "Then what is it?" I asked, my anger simmering, threatening to break through. "How do you explain the kiss I saw? How do you explain the texts, the late nights, the distance? You've been hiding something from me, Jenna." For a long moment she didn't say anything. Her gaze was fixed on the floor, her fingers nervously twisting a strand of hair. Finally she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "His name is Noah," she said, barely audible. "Noah," I repeated, the name strange on my tongue. "And what's he to you?" She hesitated again, the guilt written all over her face. "He's a friend." "A friend," I echoed, the disbelief in my voice obvious. "That's what you're going with?" She winced, but didn't respond immediately. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve, like she was trying to find the right words. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said finally. "I never planned for it to happen. I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what?" I snapped. "That you've been sleeping with him behind my back? That you've been lying to me for months?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It's not like that. I never meant for it to go this far." I stood there, fists clenched, every nerve in my body screaming at me. "Then how far did it go, Jenna?" I asked, my voice cold. "How much further did you let it get before you decided to tell me? How long was I in the dark?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you," she repeated, her voice cracking. "I didn't know how to explain it. He's been there for me. I was confused. Things between us, they weren't what they used to be. And Noah, he was just there when I needed someone to talk to." "So you kissed him tonight because he was there for you?" I asked, barely able to keep the venom from my words, her face twisted with shame. "I know it was wrong. I didn't want this. It was a mistake. I never wanted you to find out like this." I couldn't look at her. "How long, Jenna? How long have you been seeing him?" "A few months," she admitted, barely above a whisper. "A few months," I repeated, my heart sinking. "You've been seeing him for months, and I had no idea. I've been here, thinking everything was fine, and you've been with him." "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely audible. "It just happened. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to fix things with you. I was scared. I'm so sorry." I stood there, feeling the ground beneath me shift. Her words felt empty, like nothing could fix what had already been broken. There was no going back. "Do you love him?" I asked, the question cutting through the silence like a knife. She hesitated, her eyes searching mine, but she didn't answer. I didn't wait for her to speak. I couldn't. The truth was already clear. Losses that followed her refusal to answer was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to demand more, but the truth was already clear. She wasn't even denying it anymore, and the guilt on her face said it all. I turned away from her first. I couldn't stand looking at her, couldn't stand seeing the woman I thought I knew, reduced to a stranger. The house that had once felt like home now felt cold, alien. I needed to get out, needed space. "I need some time alone," I said, my voice tight, fighting back the wave of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. She reached out, panic in her eyes. "Please, don't leave. We need to talk." I couldn't stay. Not now. Not when everything inside me was unraveling. "I can't," I said, my voice breaking as I grabbed my jacket and walked out, not looking back. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked, the cool air doing nothing to dull the sting in my chest. My mind was a mess of questions, none of which had answers. How long? How many times had she kissed him? How had I not seen this? I couldn't believe it was happening. She had always been my constant. And now this, the one person I trusted more than anyone, had shattered everything. I ended up at a bar. The dim light and the smell of alcohol made it easy to blend in, to disappear. The place was nearly empty, just a few late-night drinkers nursing their whiskey. I ordered one myself, hoping it would dull the ache in my chest, even for a moment. But it didn't. The alcohol burned, but didn't numb the rawness. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about Noah. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? Why him? I stared into my glass, the liquids swirling, my thoughts racing. The anger was there, but it was mixed with confusion and betrayal. She'd been with him for months and I had no idea. Every moment felt like a lie. I drank faster, hoping the warmth would clear the storm in my head. But it didn't. Nothing would. I couldn't forget what had happened. I couldn't forget how she kissed him. I couldn't forget how she hadn't even tried to explain herself. She had admitted it all, no excuses, just guilt. I stayed at the bar for hours, but nothing could change what I had seen. There was no way to undo the truth. I kept asking myself why she did it, why she'd hurt me this way. And the more I drank, the more the questions piled up. How could she lie like that? How could she look me in the eyes and pretend nothing was wrong? The alcohol made it harder to focus, but the pain didn't go away. It only made it worse. I knew I couldn't stay at the bar forever. The night was winding down, and I had to face her. I had to go back home, even though I didn't want to. When I finally left the bar, the cold night air hit me hard, sobering me up. I walked back home in a daze, my head spinning. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. I reached the house, and there it was, her car parked in the driveway. She hadn't gone anywhere. She was still here. I stood there for a moment, unsure of whether to go in. Part of me wanted to leave, pack a bag, and disappear. I couldn't stay here with her, but another part of me wanted to confront her, demand more answers, ask why. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to face her yet. I stood in the driveway, my hand frozen on the door handle. The cold air did nothing to numb the weight pressing on my chest. I had no plan, no idea what I was going to say to her or how I was supposed to feel. I just knew I couldn't stay
Away any longer.
I walked up the steps, each one feeling heavier than the last, until I was standing in front of the door. I hesitated, not because I wasn't sure I wanted to face her, but because I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do when I did. Inside, the house felt cold, empty. Jenna was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with her face buried in her hands. She didn't notice me standing in the doorway at first, and I let the silence hang in the air. I didn't know if I was waiting for her to speak or if I just needed a moment to prepare myself. "I didn't know where you went," she said, finally lifting her head, her voice soft, fragile. I couldn't look at her. "I needed space," I replied, my voice tight. My eyes were fixed on the floor, the walls, anywhere but her. I couldn't process this, not yet. Jenna's voice cracked as she spoke. "I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted this. You didn't want to hurt me," I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "How could you do this, Jenna? How could you look me in the eye and pretend everything was fine?" She opened her mouth but stopped. Her lips trembled. "I wasn't looking for this. It just happened. And when I realized, I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to fix things with you." "Fix things with me?" I shot back, the anger rising now. "You don't fix things like this, Jenna. You don't sleep with someone else when things are broken. You don't hide it. You don't lie." She swallowed, her eyes filled with guilt. "I didn't want it to go this far. I never meant for you to find out like this. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't." I stared at her, disbelief cutting through the anger. "You've been seeing him for months. How could I not notice? How could I miss that?" "I never meant for it to be this way," she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. He was just there when I needed someone to talk to. I was lost. I didn't know how to deal with everything. Everything. It didn't even feel real anymore. And what about me? Did you think I didn't need you? That I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't feel the distance between us? "I'm so sorry," she said, tears starting to fall again. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me." I shook my head, stepping back. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore. I don't know if I even know who you are anymore." The words hit harder than I expected. She flinched, as if I'd physically struck her, but I didn't care. I needed to get away from her, from this. "I need time," I said, the weight of everything crashing down on me. "I can't do this right now." Jenna stood up quickly, rushing toward me. "Please, don't leave like this. We can figure this out. We can fix this." "I don't know how to fix this," I said, my voice breaking slightly.
Maybe we can't.
Maybe it's too far gone already. The silence in the room was suffocating. I couldn't stand it any longer. I turned and walked toward the door, but I stopped before I stepped outside. "I don't even know if I want this to be fixed." I didn't wait for her to answer. I just left. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there with her, not after everything. As I stepped into the cold night, it felt like I was walking away from a life I once knew. The house behind me was still, silent. I wasn't sure what I was walking toward, but I knew I couldn't stay. The only thing I was sure of was that everything had changed. I walked aimlessly, the cold biting through my jacket, but I barely felt it. My mind was numb, replaying every moment of the night, her words, her tears, the betrayal. None of it made sense, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I ended up at a small park on the edge of town. The streets were empty, the park lit only by dim, flickering lamps. I sat on a bench, staring at the ground, trying to make sense of everything. But I couldn't. The more I thought, the more the weight of it crushed me. She had said she wasn't looking for it, that Noah just happened. But how could I believe that? She'd been lying to me for months. The kiss, the way they'd looked at each other, it all spoke volumes. How had I missed it? Questions buzzed in my mind. Who was Noah? How long had they been seeing each other? Why hadn't I seen the signs? But more than that, I wanted to know why she'd done it, why she hadn't come to me first. I wanted answers, but I knew the answers wouldn't fix anything. I looked at my watch and realized hours had passed. The cold had seeped into my bones, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. I didn't know what to do next. I couldn't keep running, couldn't stay lost in this haze. I needed to make a choice. Finally, I stood, my legs stiff, my mind still swirling. The house was calling me, though I didn't want to go back. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to see her again. But I couldn't stay out here forever. I had to face the reality. I had to face her. I walked back toward the house, my pace slow. I didn't know what I was expecting, but when I reached the driveway, I saw her car still parked there. A flicker of hope rose, quickly dashed. If she was still here, why didn't she come out to find me? Had she packed? Was she leaving? The house was silent when I entered. I walked through the rooms, each step feeling heavier than the last. No sign of her, not in the kitchen, not in the living room. She was gone. But where? I walked into the bedroom, half expecting her to be there, waiting, but the closet door was open and her suitcase was gone. She had packed, left. I stood there, the emptiness of the room settling over me. Part of me felt relieved. At least I didn't have to make the choice of whether to leave or stay. She had made
It for me.
But another part of me felt something else, something I couldn't name. The finality of it all. Had she left because she thought I wouldn't forgive her? Or had she left because I had already been gone in her eyes? I stayed in the room for a few more minutes, as if waiting for something to change. But nothing did. I knew there was no point in staying. The house was empty, and so was I. I turned, walked to the door, and locked it behind me. I wasn't going to keep holding on to something already broken. I wasn't going to keep chasing a ghost. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to walk away from the past. The days after Jenna left blurred together. I spent the first few days pacing around the house, unable to shake the images in my mind. I'd thought that once she was gone, the weight would lift, but it didn't. The silence in the house was deafening, louder than any argument we'd had. It was the quiet of everything we'd built, slowly crumbling to dust. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Was I supposed to feel angry, relieved, grief-stricken? I felt all of it at once, and yet none of it really stuck. It was as if I were floating, drifting through a fog that never lifted. I kept thinking about her. What was she doing? Was Noah with her? I wanted to ask, to know every detail, but I didn't. I'd given up asking questions that had no answers. I'd given up hoping for something that wasn't there anymore. The first real moment of clarity came when I realized I hadn't heard from her. Not a call, not a message, not even an email. It was like she'd vanished, and it hit me harder than I expected. She'd left me, but she hadn't even bothered to look back. She hadn't tried to explain, to fix what she'd broken. And that realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. I tried to move on, even if I didn't know how. I threw myself into work, trying to bury the emptiness in my routine. The days passed in a blur of meetings and emails. I'd get home, eat, go to bed, and repeat. But every night, as I lay in bed, my mind would return to her, to the life we'd shared, to the promises we'd made. I started running. The rhythmic pounding of my feet against the pavement was the only thing that could clear my head, if only for a moment. At least when I was running, I didn't have to think about anything else. My body ached, but it was the kind of ache that reminded me I was still alive. One evening, I came home late from work, exhausted. I wasn't expecting anything, no texts, no calls, but as I walked in, something caught my eye. The light on my phone blinked, signaling a new message. It was from her. My heart lurched in my chest. I stood there, frozen, staring at the message for a moment before I opened it. I miss you. It was short, simple, but it cut through me. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it wasn't that. The words felt too easy, too late. I almost deleted it, almost. But something made me respond. Why now? I didn't expect an answer right away, but then a few minutes later her response came. I've been thinking about you, about us, and I know I fucked up. I'm sorry. I read the words over and over, but they didn't seem to hold any weight. Sorry didn't fix things. Sorry didn't erase the months of lies, the betrayal. Sorry didn't bring back the trust she'd shattered. I don't know if I can do this anymore, I typed, my fingers hesitating over the keys. I stared at the message for a long time before I hit send. The response was quick. I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? What difference did it make? The truth was, I had moved on, in a way. I wasn't the same person I was before I found out about her and Noah. I'd changed, for better or worse, but I knew I couldn't go back. Not to who I was, not to her, not to any of it. I sat there staring at my phone, the words from her lingering in the air between us. Part of me wanted to hold on to the small hope that we could fix this, that we could find our way back, but I knew better now. I couldn't keep holding on to something that wasn't there. I put the phone down and walked away, leaving her message unanswered. The house was still empty. I was still broken. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to move forward, even if I didn't know where that path led. Babas. The weeks that followed Jenna's message were a blur. I still woke up every morning with the weight of it all hanging over me. The house felt quieter than ever, though the noise inside my head had started to fade. The anger was gone, replaced by something heavier. Emptiness. It was like I had no direction, no real sense of who I was anymore. I kept running, pushing myself harder each time, as if I could outrun the pain. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't escape the memories. Jenna's laugh, her voice, the way she'd look at me when we were happy. All of it kept coming back in waves, crashing over me when I least expected it. One evening, as I returned from yet another run, I found myself standing in front of the house. The streetlights illuminated the front door, and for a second I imagined I could still see her inside, waiting. I shook my head, trying to push that thought out. I hadn't let myself dwell on her for days, but there it was again, tugging at me. I walked inside, feeling the silence fill the air. Then, my phone buzzed. Another message from Jenna. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened it immediately. I've been thinking a lot. I want to see you. My heart skipped, but I stopped myself before I could get carried away. I didn't want to fall for this again. The last time she wanted to see me, it had been nothing but broken promises. She was sorry. But what did that really mean? Sorry didn't heal the hurt. Sorry didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line. I don't think that's a good idea, I replied quickly, before I could second-guess myself. I stared at the message, waiting for a response. It didn't take long. I understand, but I need you to know I'll always care about you. I looked at her words, and for the first time in weeks, something inside me shifted. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt tired. Tired of holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. Tired of trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. The memories of our life together felt distant now. The love we shared seemed so far removed from the person I was now. Maybe we had been good together once, but that time was gone. And as much as I wanted to hold on to the past, I couldn't. I typed a response, my fingers moving slowly, carefully choosing my words. I'll always care about you too, but we're not the same people anymore. It's time we both let go. I hesitated, then hit send. The finality of the message settled on me like a weight I didn't know I was carrying. It felt both freeing and heartbreaking at the same time, but I knew it was the right thing. I put my phone down, took a deep breath and walked to the window. The street outside was empty, just like I felt, but at least now there was a clarity to it. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't chasing a ghost. I didn't know what came next for me, but I knew I had to start moving forward. I had to stop waiting for something that wasn't coming back. It wasn't about forgiving her. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about finally letting go. Because holding on to the past wasn't helping me. It was just holding me in place, trapping me in a life that no longer fit. The next chapter, whatever it was mine to write, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to begin again. Barrett, the days passed slowly, but something had shifted. The weight that had been suffocating me, the knot that twisted in my stomach every time I thought about Jenna or the life we had built together, had finally loosened. It wasn't gone. Nothing like that happens overnight, but it was easier to breathe, easier to wake up and not feel like I was dragging the past with me every step of the way. I didn't feel ready to jump into anything new, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could. I started small, reconnecting with old friends, going out for drinks with people I hadn't seen in ages, pushing myself to actually enjoy the moments that came, instead of holding on to memories that didn't serve me anymore. It wasn't perfect. There were still nights when the silence in the house felt too loud, when I missed the simple act of coming home to someone. But those moments were becoming fewer, and each time they crept up, I found it easier to push them aside. I spent more time at work, throwing myself into projects I had put off. It was a good distraction, but more than that, it gave me a sense of control. I was no longer sitting idly, waiting for my life to fall into place. I was taking charge of it. One Friday evening, after a long week, I decided to go out on my own. A local bar I used to frequent was hosting a live band, and I figured it would be a good way to break the routine. I wasn't looking for anything, no expectations, no hope of finding something to fill the emptiness that had lingered for so long. But when I walked through the door, I realized I wasn't looking for something to fill the space. I was just looking to exist in it, to enjoy the here and now. The bar was crowded, but not overly so. The music was good, the atmosphere relaxed. I grabbed a drink and found a spot against the wall, watching people laugh, chat, and enjoy the night. For the first time in a while, I felt a sense of peace. Then, I saw her. She was sitting at the bar with a friend, laughing, her eyes sparkling as she spoke. Her voice carried across the room, and I caught myself listening for a moment before I realized what I was doing. It was like seeing a stranger, but also not. I didn't recognize her at first, not in this new version of me, not in the version of myself that was beginning to heal. She was the same woman I'd loved, the same woman who had hurt me. But now, there was a distance between us that wasn't just physical. I turned away quickly, not wanting to engage, not wanting to go down that path again. But something about her presence pulled at me, and for a moment, I found myself watching her again. She must have felt my gaze, because when she looked over, our eyes locked. There was no surprise, no awkwardness, just a brief moment where the years we spent together seemed to fold back into that single glance. I felt a pang of something, nostalgia maybe. It wasn't regret, but it was something close. She smiled at me, a soft, almost sad smile, and I could see the traces of her apologies still lingering there. The weight of it, the memories. I didn't wave, didn't walk over. I just stood there, letting the moment pass. It wasn't that I didn't care anymore, or that I was suddenly over everything, but I wasn't going to go backward. I wasn't going to chase a past that wasn't mine to claim. Instead, I turned away and walked out of the bar. The air outside felt crisp, sharp against my skin, but it was the kind of fresh that made me feel alive again. I wasn't stuck anymore. I wasn't trapped by the ghosts of my past. I had walked away from that, and I was finally free. The next chapter was just beginning, and whatever it was, I was ready for it. The weeks that followed felt like a slow exhale, the tension in my chest slowly releasing. I began to realize something important. The past wasn't a place I had to live in forever. I had spent so much time holding on, wondering if I could ever move past what happened. But now, I could see that letting go
Wasn't about forgetting.
It was about making room for something new. The first real step came when I finally cleared out some of Jenna's things from the house. It felt strange at first, almost like I was betraying something we had. But the more I packed away her belongings, the more I realized that I wasn't erasing her. I was just making space for myself again, a space I'd forgotten was mine to take. One morning, I sat down with a cup of coffee in my hand and looked around the living room. It was quiet, peaceful. The clutter that used to make it feel like home now just felt suffocating. I realized how much I had changed in just a few months. The man I was, the one who was consumed with questions and doubts, wasn't who I was now. I wasn't the same person who had waited for Jenna's apology or who had wanted to find a way back to what we had. I wasn't that person anymore, and I was finally okay with it. I started seeing things differently, everyday moments, things I'd taken for granted. The simple joy of going for a walk without a heavy heart, the quiet satisfaction of reading a book without feeling like I should be doing something more important. I began noticing how much life had passed me by while I had been drowning in grief. I wasn't going to waste any more of it. Eventually, I reached out to some old friends, people I hadn't seen in ages. We had all drifted, pulled in different directions by work and life. I felt like I was reconnecting with the parts of myself I had left behind. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, but enough to remind me that I was still capable of connection, of feeling something new. It wasn't about replacing Jenna, it was about rediscovering the parts of myself I had forgotten. One evening, I was sitting at a cafe scrolling through my phone when I got a text from my mum. "How are you doing, son?" I stared at the message for a while before replying. "I'm okay, better than I was." She responded almost instantly. "That's good. I'm proud of you. I know it hasn't been easy." It wasn't just about moving past Jenna, it was about reclaiming my life, about finding my way back to a version of myself I could be proud of. I had to accept that things hadn't turned out the way I thought they would, but that didn't mean I was lost. I was still here, still moving forward, still capable of finding happiness in the small moments. Months passed, and I found myself thinking less and less about Jenna. I wondered where she was, what she was doing. But I no longer felt that old ache. It wasn't a clean break, and I didn't expect it to be. I still carried pieces of her with me, just like I always would. But I wasn't defined by what happened anymore. One evening, after a long day at work, I walked outside, breathing in the cool evening air. The sun had just set, casting a warm glow over the street, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the promise of tomorrow. I wasn't
Waiting for anything.
waiting for closure or for some dramatic shift in my life. I was just living, and that was enough.